It's a future I, for one, have been dreaming of since the early days of Batman, when he used to summon the Batmobile to come pick him up without a driver. These days, the so-called driverless or autonomous cars look a little different, but it is a reality. There are plenty of critics, but there are also big hopes that these things could help us put an end to the mind-numbing, blood-boiling effects of sitting in city traffic for hours at a time, not to mention reduce accident rates. To that end, earlier today, Boston Mayor Marty Walsh announced a major partnership with the World Economic Forum to study the use of autonomous vehicle technology on our city streets and develop the new rules of the road for them to operate. Today also marked the debut of self-driving Uber cars in Pittsburgh. So are we ready for this wave of the future? Joining me to discuss are Chris Carter. Chris, the co-chair of the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics, which is working on the project. It's good to meet you, Chris. And Robin Chase is the co-founder and former CEO of Zipcar. She also co-founded the vehicle communications company, Venium, and used to serve on the state's transportation board. Robin, it's great to see you again, too. Let me start with you. Why is a city that has enough trouble having cars with drivers and, let's say, bicycles coexisting, why were we chosen, do you think? Do you know?
Yeah, so in the conversations we've had with the World Economic Forum, we put forth a proposal that was really compelling to them because the city is already undertaking a transportation planning process, and what we've heard from the public is safety, access, and reliability are the key things that they want to address. Safety is huge if we can accomplish this with autonomous vehicles.
And you don't know yet where, when, how many, that's to be determined.
Yeah.
Do you at least know, at Pittsburgh, from what I understand, there'll be a driver in those cars, which is sort of reassuring to people like me in the driverless cars. Do we know yet if that's part of the mix here, or you don't know?
I think we've seen that modeled in other cities, and it seems like a good way to sort of do the testing initially, but we'll work with the state to figure that out.
Robin, a couple of years ago, you wrote a piece, Will a World of Driverless Cars Be Heaven or Hell? Start with the hell first. What's the hell?
Oof, the hell. The hell is we drop these cars in without any changes, and it will be cheaper to have it keep driving around the block than to pay for parking downtown. We'll lose all of those drivers who will be unemployed and angry, and we'll lose all of our transportation infrastructure financing because these will be electric vehicles that aren't paying fuel taxes and also aren't paying for parking garages, speeding tickets, or any of that stuff. So a hole drops out on our transportation.
You also think they should be shared vehicles, a la Zipcar. Look at the smile on her face.
Of course.
Why?
Let's talk about the heaven.
Why?
Heaven.
What is the heaven?
So the heaven, which is even more remarkable than I could have imagined. There's been some studies done by the OECD that says if we have shared trips in shared cars, so just picture you don't own a car, and we're both going together, so we both go together on the trips instead of each by ourselves. We only need 3% of the cars we have today. Even at peak times, 3% of the time. And what will we get for that travel? You'll get door-to-door public transportation at the price of a bus fare and for the speed of going by yourself.
Let me add a couple of what I think are fairly obvious pluses to this, and tell me if you disagree with any of these things. One, they're time-saving for those of us who are humans. I mean, that's fairly obvious. 81% of accidents allegedly are caused by human behavior. No more distracted drivers, no more drunk drivers. That's pretty obvious. Parking woes, obviously, over. And obviously for people with disabilities, those are good things. It's the negatives that make me nervous. Let's go down the list. Is the technology sophisticated enough? Every article I've read includes something about, well, when it's really rainy, the technology doesn't work so well. Are we really ready for this? Not the idea, but the actual execution?
I have faith in my national government that we're not going to put them out there when they're not ready, and they don't have to be ready for every circumstance. It doesn't have to do Cambridge in a blizzard or Montana in some weird thing, but in a geo-fenced geography, today, without snow or rain, yes, and probably with rain and probably with snow as we go along. But
are you convinced of that, or it's one of the things you're going to learn during this pilot? You call it a pilot? What do you call this thing you're doing?
We're calling it a partnership.
Okay.
We are totally in the realm of wanting to test the things because the technology is getting better every day, and Boston has unique challenges that need to be solved for this to work in urban environments, and we want to be a part of that. We want to see how it will work.
And I really believe deep in my heart we're not going to let them out in the wild without anybody in the car if they're doing any of those bad behaviors. But on the flip side, I feel like sometimes people have the wrong standard for that safety issue.
What does that mean?
The standard should be, will we have fewer fatalities and fewer injuries than with people driving themselves?
So even if it isn't safe, is it safer?
Is it safer?
Well, there's another part of safety, though. A little later in the show, I'm going to talk about Colin Powell's hacked emails. I'm going to talk about the Williams sisters and Simone Biles and their health records. there's going to be a lot of computer stuff in this thing too. Why should I not worry that a hacker is going to take control of Mayor Walsh's driverless car, for example? Why should I not worry about that?
You should be worried today whether a hacker can take his regular car right now, his smartphone right now, his desktop. It's an issue that we have to be concerned about in every day of our lives right this second. It's not more or less. We should be secure.
Okay, and as the oldster in this crowd, human judgment matter? I mean, is there not a place, and I agree with Robin makes a wonderful point, perfection is not the goal. The goal is safer in addition to all the other things. But it seems to me that human judgment is a pretty valuable thing. When you see that thing in the road and you decide if you swerve, you're going to hit somebody else, but there are two people in front of you, so do you swerve to avoid, you know what I mean? I mean,
those are exactly the kind of questions.
How does that ever get replaced?
Yeah. Miles and miles and miles of driving in test locations and sort of expanded tests, we are able to do machine learning in a way that sort of allows us to build vehicles, hopefully, that get closer to that human decision. But you're right, there might, it might be years off.
You took the bait on that question
I
that
did?
someone gave you, because let's think of
I actually
million
gave it to
car accidents.
myself, as
If you think
shocking
of-
as that is, Robin.
I
but go
can't
ahead.
believe it, Jim. So think
But
of
go
take 100 car accidents, take 1 million car accidents. What fraction of those car accidents involved that kind of ethical choice?
Very few.
Extremely few. And I feel like it's the number one thing that people say, oh, I have to worry about this. And I think, well, what about the 99.99 other accidents that we're going to get rid of?
Okay, so somebody gave me that question. You who gave me this question? You. You mentioned jobs a minute or two ago. Your guy is the jobs guy, former labor leader Marty Walsh. What happens to all the jobs in existing industries that disappear, which they obviously will? What do they get replaced by?
This is exactly why the city wants to be a part of this conversation from the early stages. We want to think about policies that get to the mobility goals that we have, but also the employment goals that we have. What are the things that those people can be retooled to do within the mobility industry? And there's lots of things, right? Imagine a bus that's no longer has a driver, but has somebody who's doing customer service on that bus and helping you navigate where you need to go in the city.
Okay, so let's assume the technology is as advanced as you say it is, or at least it won't go ahead until it's at the place where it's as safe as it needs to be. There's the science and there's the psychology. How do you get me, the generic me, but me, how do you get me ready for this?
It is so simple, Jim. Let's say you don't want to do it. Your child is going to, your college student's going to want to do it, your late night worker's going to want to do it, and they're going to do it, and you will bump it, you will talk to them, and you'll say, what, you didn't die, and it was door to door, and you paid $1.50? I'm going to try that.
But you're dismissing it too
I'm
easily.
not dismissing it.
But that is the psychology of the driver who's not quite yet ready to see this thing.
But he doesn't have to do it. That's my whole point. You don't have to adopt it. No one's going to be forcing you. You will adopt it through choice.
You ever ridden in one?
Yes.
And how was that?
I refused to get behind the wheel.
Meaning?
Meaning I didn't want to be in charge when it told me to come back into charge, and I thought, whoa, this is $1 million vehicle, and there's all these people here. Don't ask me.
No anxiety, Robin?
No.
Okay. Have you ever ridden in one?
I have, but in a controlled environment, and I was also not behind the wheel.
Okay, little Nostradamus before you go. How long before we see an autonomous car on the streets
goodness.
in
I
Boston?
will defer to the experts.
How long before we see
experts
an
on that.
autonomous car on the streets of Boston or Cambridge?
Well, we have your partnership.
So we can
which
talk
is
about
one.
it in Boston. We will have something by the end of this year that we can point to as a test.
Here, as corollary, all the major OEMs have promised to start selling those cars by 2020.
Yikes.
3.5 years from now.
Okay, you'll help get me ready. Chris, pleasure to meet you. Robin,
Nice
it's
to meet
great
you
to
as well,
see
Jim.
you as always. Thanks so much for your time.